It's time for another Dice Tower review with Randy White and Mark Streed.
Hello folks, welcome to Board Game Corner. I'm Mark.
And I'm Randy.
This week we're taking a look at Pandemic Contagion. This time the tables have turned, and you are the virus, but there is no cure.
Pandemic Contagion is a standalone game for 2 to 5 players, 13 and up, that takes about half hour to play. Now, unlike Pandemic, this is not a cooperative game. Each of you are competing with one another to be the most destructive virus.
So let's take a closer look at the outbreak. So this is the overview of Contagion. The player cards look like this. They have a spot for your petri dish we'll look at in a sec. They also have these tracks. You have the incubation, the infection, and the resistance. These track the ability of your virus to infect the world. The petri dish is cool. You have your little cubes that indicate your virus, and each cube indicates 1 million infected. Then you have the cities throughout the world that you are trying to infect. And they all have tracks here for the individual players to put their own cubes, starting from the top down. And each city has an ability, once you overtake it, that you can use. Also, we have event cards, and they look like this. The event cards are pretty cool. They actually dictate the story of the spread of your virus. You also have the Contagion cards. The Contagion cards are what you use to actually infect cities, and they're all color-based, so you know which color city you can affect and move into and add to and so forth.
At the beginning of each round of Contagion, the top card is drawn off of the event deck. Event cards shown at the base the event that applies throughout that round for each player's turn. It also shows whether that event occurs at the beginning, end, or during the player's turn. During their turn, the player has a choice of 3 actions. They can draw cards, these Contagion cards, and the number they draw is determined by where the marker is on their incubation track. In this case, blue has the marker at 1, so whenever he draws, he gets 1 card. The next thing a player can do is infect cities, either cities they've already infected or new cities. The player, when he infects a city, whether it's a new or existing one, he will place this many cubes, as indicated by where the marker is on his infection track, in that city. So in the case of the blue player, he can place 2 cubes every time he infects a city. And the last thing a player can do is mutate his disease to become even stronger. And he does this by paying the number of cards shown on the track to advance his marker up 1 space. So for example, if the player wanted to mutate his disease to draw more cards, he would pay 2 cards of any color and move it from 1 to 2. If he wanted to increase his infection rate to be able to place 3 cubes in each city when he infects it rather than 2, he would pay 4 to move the cube up. The last track is for resistance. That makes the disease resist cards that do damage to the cubes, his cubes that are out there, or requires him to discard Contagion cards. There are 2 types of scoring in Contagion. The first is death toll scoring. And death toll scoring occurs when the 2nd, 4th, and 6th skull and crossbones pop up on the event track. So in this case, 1 has already occurred, and the event card we just turned over has the 2nd skull and crossbones, so we would start a round of death toll scoring. The way death toll scoring works is that the player who controls the most cubes on each city card gains the number at the bottom of these 3 scores. So in this case, yellow would gain 2 points on the score track, red would gain 3, black would gain 4, and in cases of ties, the player who has the uppermost line, in this case blue, would score these 3 points. The other type of scoring that occurs in Contagion is city eradication scoring, and that occurs when an entire city has been infected. The number of residents in each city is shown by the number in the upper right-hand corner in red. In this case, Delhi is shown with 6 million residents, Jakarta with 9, and so forth. When the number of cubes, each representing 1 million infected residents, when the number of cubes matches the number in the upper right-hand corner, that indicates the entire city has been infected and that the city can be closed out and scored at that time. So let's say it's Blue's turn. Blue chooses to draw a card, and he can still only draw 1 at a time. So he draws this card, which is a pink Contagion card. Now, to infect a city, blue can do one of two things. He can infect a city he already is infecting using one card of that city's color, or he can infect a city that he doesn't yet have any infection in using 2 cards of that city's color. Those who have played China are also familiar with the fact that you can use 2 cards of the same color to be a wild card. So if blue wanted to infect the orange city, he could use 1 orange card, 2 blue cards as a wild to make 2 orange cards and infect an orange city. In this case, what blue chooses to do is this. He is not yet in Delhi. He knows he can infect by putting 2 cubes in a city, so he chooses to play 1 pink card, 2 blue cards as a wild, to make 2 pink cards. And he then puts 2 cards, or 2 cubes in Delhi. That makes the total number of cubes in Delhi 6, which matches this up here and triggers the city eradication scoring. When that happens, the player with the most cubes gets the top number, the player with the second most cubes gets the second number, and the player with the least cubes gets 2, or the bottom number. For Delhi, yellow would get 6 points, because although he's tied with blue, he has the uppermost line. Blue would come in second, get 4, and both gray and red are tied, but gray has the uppermost line, so he would get 2. So again, yellow gets 6, blue gets 4, gray gets 2. But the additional benefit is that the player who plays the last cube in fulfilling or completely infecting the city also gets this benefit at the end. And so blue would get to draw 1 card immediately after completing this. And then the city would be closed out, and play would continue. Play continues until all of the event cards have been exhausted, or there are only 2 cities left in play. At that time, 1 final round of death toll scoring is performed. So in this case, we'd see that black would get 3, and blue would get 3 as well for those 2 cities. After that, each player gets additional scoring based upon his mutation values. So blue would get 1 plus 2 more plus 1 more for a total of 4. The player with the highest number of points wins the game.
Okay, I love this game. It is a blast. The theme is amazing. The components that tie you into the theme with the Petri dishes, the cards, the event cards, and if I have one thing to say that I wish there was more of or better, is that I want more variety in the event cards. It's a small stack that you shuffle every time, and you pull out 3 cards of each type before you stack or build the deck. I just wish there was more variety in the events.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of variance between games because the order in which they come up
is always different.
Yes, is random.
But it's really the story of how the virus spreads. So I want to see all kinds of different variations, but that doesn't detract at all. I'm trying to find something that I could, would like to see improved. But the game is fantastic. I really love it. And the theme is just out of the park.
Well, I disagree with you in the sense that I think the theme is horrible because you're trying to kill the world, but I think it delivers well.
It delivers well. Well, yes. The theme is great to suck you into the game. It is what I'm saying.
The Petri dishes are a very good way of saying, well, it's novel.
Yes.
And I think it delivers on that well. I don't feel like I'm a disease necessarily, although I don't know what diseases.
I don't know. Some may disagree.
Yeah, some may disagree, yes. But I agree with Mark in the sense that the components work together well to quickly draw people in the game. They're very colorful, easy to learn. This is something that most people should be able to learn fairly quickly. There are nuances in the game that will take you a couple playthroughs to really catch.
And master. I mean, there's some really neat combining of things as you play.
And that's the best part of the game is as you become more familiar with the importance of some of these actions that occur when you kill the entire city, you are able to chain moves. You're able to completely exhaust one city, and when you close out that city, you are able to move a cube to another city, for example, and close out that one as well.
Now, would you agree that it has a little bit of a smash-up feel to it?
The scoring does have a similar mechanism to smash-up.
It has a little bit of that flavor.
But that's it. This is the scoring. In a sense, there's 3 scores, and you're trying to compete and you don't know, as you're putting more cubes in this case, or cards in the case of Smash Up, as you're putting more on there, you are bringing not only yourself closer to the higher score, but potentially one of your opponents as well.
Yep.
And then you've got those.
You have to be very careful about that.
Especially as you get to 5-player games, because there's a lot more time as you go around the whole table.
Indeed.
But, like Mark, I don't really have any complaints about the game. I think there's a lot of gameplay, a lot of replayability. It's a quick game, not a lot of downtime between turns. If I were to change anything, it would be nice to have some indication.
Upgraded scoring components.
Just basically, these are very simple, but we find ourselves going over 50,
looping it,
multiple times. It'd be nice if it said 50 plus on one side, so we knew who was all the way around. But otherwise, very replayable game. A lot of gameplay for the price, I think.
Oh yeah, it's huge, and it's this little box. It's so deep. The gameplay is so deep. You'd be really surprised. It's fantastic. Now to our verdict. So I can't recommend this game enough. I really, really enjoy it. And if you can buy it, go buy it right now. So one of the variances that we didn't talk about is in a 2-player game, you play with an NPC, or non-player character, that adds cubes every round, which keeps the game kind of flowing for a 2-player.
That makes it a little bit tighter. In some cases,
it really does. But you can use it up to 4 players, and I would suggest doing that. It's really fun to have that extra just unknown in the game.
Right. So if you're playing with 4 players or less, after you've gotten used to the base game, we recommend looking at that 2-player variant and maybe using that dummy character in your other games.
Definitely. So this game gets high marks for me, 3.5 corners out of 4.
Now, Mark and I rated the individual attributes a little bit differently, but I came up with the same score as he did, 3.5 corners out of 4. The game is different than Pandemic, even though it's part of the Pandemic family. Those of you who love Pandemic may or may not like this game, but on its own right, standing on its own, it's a very good, very playable, very enjoyable game.
It just doesn't have the co-op that the Pandemic has.
Right. So,
and if you're really into co-op games, you might miss that from this, but it didn't detract from me at all.
No, nor me.
Right, so that's our review this week. I hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, we'll see you at the table.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at DicetowerNetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.